You know, one of the things of being a baby boomer is that we get fascinated, in a sense, many of us, over things that other people think are shocking or unacceptable or whatever the case may be, because we look at what is it that we grew up with. Now, today, in the secular world, it is Halloween. And it's fascinating. My experience with Halloween as someone who speaks different languages is always, it's a nightmare for me. And the reason is because we have Halloween here in the United States. Now, in other countries, they don't actually celebrate it. They celebrate something similar to what you see in Mexico, which is the Day of the Dead. And that's where people go to cemeteries and actually have a meal recognizing their ancestors who've gone before them. And I'm sure there are stories and everything else of what they talk about. But here, we have a whole different focus on Halloween. And it's not for us the Day of the Dead, but for what it is it's this day where we kind of like to scare each other. And one of the fascinating things about it that a priest once told me is really what we recognize in Halloween is that since Jesus died on the cross and rose, he conquered evil, and so we can laugh at evil. So that's a thought that I've always loved about, the understanding Halloween. However, I also deal with other cultures, and there are priests in other countries who are always preaching that Halloween is this nightmare and it's awful and keep away from it and it's demonic and it's all this. It says, well, then I'm caught in between the American culture, which goes, it's Halloween. And the other cultures would go, this is demonic. And I'm caught in the middle. So it's always a frustration. Now, this year is the first time in a long time I'm not dealing with two cultures. But it's always a fascinating reality. But it's important for us to look at what it is that we're seeing today, tomorrow, and the next day. And the focus is on death. Today, not so much, because it's Halloween. And Halloween's a secular holiday. But tomorrow and Sunday, yes, so much. Tomorrow, which is the whole point of Halloween, All Hallows Eve, tomorrow is the celebration of All Saints' Day, which is not a holy day of obligation in the United States, by the way. It is most years, but this year it isn't because it falls on a Saturday. So it's not a holy day of obligation. It's still All Saints' Day. It's still a holy day. It's just not a holy day of obligation. If you go to church tomorrow, you will hear the readings for All Saints' Day. The following day is All Souls' Day, and that is the church's funeral. It's the annual funeral for all those who have died in our church back to day one. It's All Souls Day. In fact, if you were to go on to bible.usccb.org and see the list of readings that are possible for Sunday, you can see there's tons of them because they're all the readings that are available for funerals. So that's what Sunday is. So these 3 days are focused on death. And death is that ultimate equalizer. It's everyone dies. Just that's it. There's no one who has survived death. But what we want to understand about it and what Jesus came to tell us is not to be afraid of death, because death is the doorway through which we experience eternal life. And the focus of eternal life is living eternally with Christ, or if you reject Christ, well, then you've got the other situation. We're not going to go there. So you see the two. And so death is the doorway through which eternal life happens. Now, one of the things I wanted to bring up that's important is, I suppose everything I bring up is important. Wouldn't we say that? Well, anyway, one of the things I wanted to bring up is, we've got to understand what our faith is all about. And as I always teach, it's not a moral code. You can go to the Unitarian Universalist Church, and I'm not saying anything bad about them by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not Catholic. You can go to the Unitarian Universalist Church and learn a moral code, and it's a very fine moral code, but it's not Catholic, because the whole concept of being Catholic is not about a moral code. If we go back to the writings from the New Testament, what is the focus of everything? Eternal life. There is eternal life. One of my favorite scenes from the movie The Poseidon Adventure, the original one, not that other one that came out, I think, in 2000. And that other one that came out in 2000, they had watertight bar doors. There's no such thing. It was kind of like these bar doors, swinging doors, but somehow they could be watertight. Don't ask me how that happens, because that's absolutely crazy. Maybe I saw it wrong. Maybe I misunderstood. But that's what it looked like to me. Watertight bar doors. That's insane. But if you remember the Poseidon Adventure was a parable. It was a gospel parable. There's a lot of connections to the Bible in the Poseidon Adventure. And there's that whole scene of the preacher who gets to find how to get to the engine room and comes back from the engine room and leads people to their salvation. Do we understand some connection there? But what is it that we see in that whole aspect? All we have to do is go follow this path, and it's only 35 feet. Remember that? And then they can make it to the engine room, and in the engine room is salvation. And what the whole thing is, they're not surrounded by death. Even though it would appear that way, there is a route that gives not only survival, but life. And it's right in the beginning of the movie. If you've ever seen the movie, and if you haven't, please go watch it. Especially, I think it starts 25 minutes in, which is when if you don't know the story of the Poseidon Adventure, it's by the way, it's not a true story. It's a fiction story. But I think it's based on some accident at sea or something like that, but it's not a true story. But if you know the story about the Poseidon Adventure, I'm talking the one from 1970, it was the one that began all these disaster films. Not films that were disasters, that's a different thing. You can find that all through the film history. But anyway, in the Poseidon Adventure, you have this whole scene where the ship is hit by it's a huge wave. It's a wall of water, which would make it a tsunami. But anyway, it's hit by this huge tsunami, and then it tips over, and it completely capsizes. And now they had to find a way out of the ship. And obviously the way out of the ship would be to what would be considered the bottom of the ship, which is now the top, because it's all tipped over. So that's the adventure, and that's part of it. Well, when they finally realize that they need to find a way out of the ballroom, it all takes place in the ballroom, the original part, the words are fascinating, because what becomes the source of their ability to begin to climb out of the ship is a Christmas tree. And what does a Christmas tree represent? Christ. So it starts there with the Christmas tree. And there's parallels of judgment, there's parallels of life, there's parallels of pilgrimage. It's all in there. But it's a Christmas tree. Go check it out. The one from 1970. Don't watch that other version. Just don't. I mean, you can go watch it if you want. You go, this isn't like the one from 1970. That's the best thing I will say. But, and notice what they're saying to each other. What is the purpose of going up the Christmas tree? There is life there. This is the way to life. Right out of the Bible. Remember, this is before 1973. Movies changed in 1973. And one of the reasons why they changed, or the reason why it changed, was that was the year of Roe versus Wade. Go back to Airport. Airport was another disaster movie. Same year, the whole bit. It was a great movie. Also done, let me think, if I have this right, Poseidon Adventure, I think, was Universal. I know Airport was Universal because all the Airport movies were Universal. I think Poseidon Adventure was Universal. It may not have been, but Airport was. And if you go back, there's a conversation that's a pro-life conversation. A pro-life conversation, which you wouldn't see today in movies, in Hollywood. You just wouldn't see that. So it's a pro-life conversation about how wonderful having children is and everything else. So that's a fascinating aspect. So you've got this reality of that kind of conversation. So this whole idea, life is up that Christmas tree. This is the way to life. This is the way. All rooted in the culture of the time, which was 1970, pre-1973. But go back and check that out. It's all about understanding life and what we're all about and everything else. Well, we also realize, as that indication from the movie, we're on a journey and death is the way to life. Death is the way to eternal life. No one gets out of here alive except for the people who rise again, which is everybody. So essentially, death is the doorway to life. That's what we truly believe. And being the doorway to life, that is what we're all about. And that is our message. As I said, go back to the New Testament. Go read what is the message of the prologue of John, which is the first chapter of John. What is the message of the prologue of 1 John? What is the message of St. Paul in the Acts of the Apostles? His message is there is eternal life. That's the message. That's what we believe in. And if that's what we believe in, that's what it's all about. So what is our message? Now, our message is not, this is the way that we can go to heaven. That wasn't Paul's message. Paul's message was, this is the way that we can lead you into heaven. That's the message. That's the whole point of the church. The church is not all about getting you into heaven. The church is all about getting the human race into heaven. That's what the church is about. So when people turn around and say, well, I don't have to go to church, or I don't believe in God, I don't believe in any of this. And there are scientific studies. I am a member of the International Association of Near-Death Studies. And this is an organization that studies near-death experiences, that studies and looks into them. Now, the whole thing of whether or not there are near-death experiences that exist is really is interesting, but what's more important is how similar so many near-death experiences are, even though they're discussed by people who have never met each other and may come from radically different backgrounds. And there's two kinds. There's two solutions or two destinations in near-death experiences, heaven and hell. And although a majority of near-death experiences seem to talk about a place that you would kind of call heaven, there are a few that talk about a place that you would kind of call hell. But they all have similarities. And that's what the fascinating thing is. There are similarities there. And by these studies, whether or not they're true or not, that's we can't say for sure because we haven't been there. It kind of reminds me of a statement made by the Rational Response Squad that was going out and arguing against God. And I'm not attacking them by any stretch of the imagination. But one of the things they were talking about is the laws of physics, which apply everywhere. Well, whoa, wait a minute. You don't know that. Do you know the laws of physics apply on Pluto? No, you don't. Why don't you know that? Because you haven't been on Pluto. You can think they apply there, but you don't know if there's other aspects that make things differently if they apply, whether they apply on Pluto or not. It's just the reality. You can say that atoms exist. You can say that atoms have certain properties, but we don't know how those properties work on other planets. We just don't. We assume they work the same way or in other solar systems or whatever, but we don't know. Well, it's the same thing. People can't turn around and say there is no such thing as eternal life, because there's no scientific evidence that proves that it doesn't exist. Maybe you can't do that. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Did you know that you can listen to Catholic Audio Media on the iHeartRadio app? Catholic Audio Media is now available through your iHeartRadio app. If you don't have the app, download it to your smartphone, tablet, or computer and subscribe through the podcast tab to Catholic Audio Media. You can also enable them through your smart speaker and hear them through the smart speaker as well. Just ask for Catholic Audio Media Podcast from iHeartRadio. You can hear them anywhere. You can listen to them as you're jogging. You can listen to them as you're preparing to go to bed. You can listen to them as you're eating and having breakfast or lunch or dinner. You can hear them anytime you want at iHeartRadio through the iHeartRadio app. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back, and we're talking about this powerful reality of Halloween and what Halloween is all about. And we're also discussing within it the context of what we are all about beyond Halloween. And what we're all about is preaching the reality that death was destroyed when Jesus died on the cross and he rose from the dead. And because of that, we have a new message. And that message is there is eternal life. Now, we was talking before the break about the International Association of Near-Death Studies and people who literally study these near-death accounts of people who may have died and have these experiences. And I've actually taken a seminar online. It wasn't live, it was recorded. You could have gone live, but I couldn't. It's recorded on how to, of course, I'm a hospital chaplain, how to address in a hospital environment someone who has a near-death experience. And I've already been in that situation where someone relayed to me what appeared to be what others would say a near-death experience. So, fascinating experience, fascinating. And what these would say on a scientific level is there's some kind of evidence that, yes, this is a possibility. But you have to go back to the time of St. Paul. And St. Paul is preaching with definitively. St. Paul is preaching definitively that there is eternal life, that Jesus did resurrect from the dead, that if Jesus didn't resurrect from the dead, we are wasting our time. So there is a resurrection. This is the whole message he was given. So how did this entire message of there is eternal life, let me show you the route to experience eternal life, just like in the Poseidon adventure, let me show you that 35-foot little corridor underwater that if you make through it, you will come back above water and you will be in the engine room, and that's where salvation is. Let me show you that way to salvation through Jesus Christ, who would be represented in the Poseidon adventure as the preacher Gene Hackman. Through Jesus Christ. Let me show you that whole route. Let me show you, because it really does exist. That's the whole message from St. Paul. He is sent to Rome, and the reason why he's going to Rome is he has been preaching all along, and he wants to preach in Rome that there is eternal life, which of course is the seat of the empire. And how is he getting there? He declared himself. When people turned against him, and they wanted him executed, and they brought him to the magistrate. He said, hey, wait a minute. I happen to be a citizen. I'm entitled to certain rights. And among those rights is I can be tried in Rome. And so that's how he got his road to Rome. And what was he all about? He wanted to preach eternal life. I want you to go back and think about this. St. Paul comes to understand there is such a thing as eternal life. He comes to encounter Christ, and his whole life radically changes. This is our message. And now you take that whole transformation, that whole understanding, and you bring that together. This is our message. And now it's many years later, it's 2 millennia later. What happened to our message? Our message has been changed to a moral code, into a cultural war. You all know that I don't like American Catholic media. There are exceptions. I always say one for Catholic TV because they do a wonderful job. It also happens to be in my diocese, but that's a different story. And one of the reasons why I don't like American Catholic media is because they lost the message and got lost in culture wars. And you will see all kinds of things going back and forth where they are manipulated in culture wars, trying to tell you what is right and what is wrong, and it's more political than anything else. And because of that, they do not defend or stand up for the actual message. They don't stand up, and that's one of my issues with American Catholic media. Remember, I am connected to another media organization based in Brazil, and they do a wonderful job teaching a lot of Catholic teachers. So do some of the other networks in Brazil and other countries. United States, sorry. And one of the problems happened in the United States. There were some. I like Catholic. I told you Catholic TV. One of the problems was that our most major Catholic TV network declared war on liberalism in the 1990s. What had happened was a teenage girl or woman. I didn't see this particular thing. What I did see was a description of it. A teenager who happened to be female. The key aspect is female. Portrayed Jesus in the Stations of the Cross, and Mother Angelica, you can find this on YouTube, Mother Angelica went ballistic, and she basically declared war on liberalism that night. And that's a direction that much of American Catholic media went. Our message is we believe in eternal life, but it got transformed to a war on liberalism. This sideswiped the entire message. So the message is lost here in the United States because the focus is don't be a liberal. That's not where the focus should be. The focus should be we believe in eternal life. That's why I teach what I teach. That's why I disagree with so much. That's why I say I disagree with American Catholic media. There are a few exceptions, but generally because it's caught in this culture war. And if you win the war against liberalism, what do you win? You win the right not to believe in liberalism, but that doesn't mean you believe in the gospel. And what is the most important message of the gospel? We believe in eternal life. And our message is to teach that. And how do we live that? So this is important, but that means that it's time for us to renew our understanding always of what it is we believe, what it is we're all about, what it is we're focused on, because we believe in eternal life. Again, going back to American Catholic media, one is their focus. Their whole focus is you're following the rules. Everything's all about the rules, and you make sure they follow the rules because that's the only way you can get to heaven. Don't be a cafeteria Catholic, they will always say. And that's where all that came from. Now, I'm not encouraging you to be a cafeteria Catholic, but at the same time, there are teachings in the church that people have a hard time about. And there are people that say, well, you can't be a Catholic unless you believe and unless you embrace every one of those teachings. Well, wait a minute. There are certain teachings in science people have a hard time embracing. How is it that you're going to say that you have to believe every aspect of Catholic teaching, otherwise you're not a Catholic? Who gave you the authority to say that? And we go back to what Catholic teaching is rooted in a deep, profound wisdom. And so it's important for us to understand wisdom. I was what was it? What was that? Oh, I was reading a book today, which I've been reading all along, Salvation by Allegiance. Actually, it is Salvation by Allegiance Alone by Matthew W. Bates from Baker Academic Press. And he's talking about how we understand this reality of it's not just that we believe. Faith, the word faith, translated from the original Greek, was actually allegiance. Why? Because Jesus is giving us a new vision of the truth. And remember, he said, I came to give you the truth. What is the truth? The truth is that if I don't eat meat on Friday, I'm going to heaven. No, the truth is this is who you truly are. And as an act of penance, which is what the church actually teaches, you can choose not to eat meat on Friday. But the picture is bigger. This is who you truly are. This is what St. Paul was all about. This is what he was preaching. There is such a thing as eternal life. Death is destroyed. Let us follow that path to eternal life. That's our mission, to live that and to teach this. We'll be right back right after this. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Life can be challenging, but amidst the trials and tribulations, there is wisdom to be found. Welcome to Sirach 2, a chapter filled with timeless guidance and insights from the book of Sirach. In this chapter, we learn the importance of remaining steadfast in our faith, even in the face of adversity. It teaches us to be patient, for trials can shape our character and lead to spiritual growth. Seeking wisdom and understanding is of utmost importance. Sirach 2 reminds us to study the teachings of the wise, be open to correction, and follow God's commandments. By doing so, we can find true fulfillment and blessings. Don't be discouraged by the temporary prosperity of the wicked or the challenges you may face. Trust in God's justice, for he rewards those who diligently seek him. Join us on this journey of faith as we discover the path to a meaningful and fulfilling life. Sirach 2 is your roadmap to wisdom, patience, and eternal blessings. Read Sirach 2 and let its timeless wisdom guide you through life's ups and downs. Available now in the book of Sirach, part of the Old Testament. Brought to you by the voice of St. Anthony Parish in Alston. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back, and so we're talking about this powerful message that we have. There is eternal life. Go back to the Poseidon Adventure. Go check that out. And if you do watch the Poseidon Adventure, give me your opinion by subscribing and or making a comment. Let me know, especially if you do it over at catholicaudiomedia.com. And you can make a comment. You can click on the thing and you can check it out, whatever. But or send me a message through email, producer@catholicaudiomedia.com, producer@catholicaudiomedia.com. Tell me what you think of the movie in light of, tell me if you can see some of the Bible parallels and what you see and everything else. And then take that to what we're truly all about as Catholics. We are all about preaching the same message that St. Paul preached, and what was his most important message. Make sure that you don't, make sure you don't say bad words in church. No, there is eternal life. That's his whole message. And this is the way to eternal life. You go see the Poseidon Adventure, that's the Gene Hackman figure kind of represented all the great leaders of the Bible, especially Moses and Jesus and maybe St. Paul. There is eternal life. Let me show you the way. We'll be back on Monday in November, where our focus is, the whole month is on death. We'll see you then. Have a blessed day. The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.